Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First this evening, West Shore Drive. Sign in for us. Great. Ready? Tell us what to sign.
I should read this, narrative. We are appearing, I am appearing before the board to request approval for a new sign insert for natural balance acupuncture, a new tenant at West Shore Plaza. As is the case with several other signs which we have recently been granted approval for, this sign box is existing, and no work other than switching out the acrylic face is being done. I thank the board for its consideration and approbation. I don't know if the mic.
You have to turn it on.
Sorry?
You have to turn it on, the switch on top.
So just change it to the letterbox sign to what's presented here. On the pylon, just black and white acrylic, black letters, right?
Actually, in acupuncture nerve, I think they want all uppercase letters or something. Now to make a note.
All uppercase letters.
And all of the other signs. On the little, here, this one.
Oh,
Acupuncture nerve,
here.
yeah. All of the others are uppercase.
This guy though stays the same.
That stays exactly the same.
Questions, comments from the board? Is there anybody from the?
I was gonna say, I think it looks okay.
Is there anybody from the public wishing to speak on this application? Hearing none, seeing none, public portion is closed. I'll move to approve as presented with the option to put uppercase letters on the pylon sign if anyone wants to.
One second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Hudson Valley iCampus sign plan.
Good evening. Young yield.
You guys can sign in and state your names. That'd be great.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, Seth Mandelbaum of McCullough, Goldberger, and Stout.
Angelo J. Martino from Cardarelli Designs in Architecture.
Angela, what was your last name? John, I didn't hear.
I'm sorry, can you say that?
What was your last name? I didn't hear you.
Martino,
Thank you.
M-A-R-T-I-N-O.
And we are here this evening on behalf of Pearl River Campus LLC, who bought this campus a couple of years ago. It's adjacent to what is still Pfizer on Middletown Road in 304. Very large campus. Pfizer actually only owns like the western sort of postage stamp, the southwestern corner. The rest of the property is now owned by our clients. They've actually leased up about 300,000 square feet of space in the last year or so. So really repurposing the former Pfizer space and have rebranded it as the Hudson Valley iCampus. They've been very aggressive in the market. And they currently have a sign that Angela's going to show you in a minute that going northbound on North Middletown Road, you really don't see it. You kind of see it when you're past it if you happen to look over your, and then you're past the entrance. So the idea is to replace that in kind, and the building denial talked about it being in a close location, but the building inspector deemed it to be kind of an in-kind replacement, and it's actually smaller. What we're proposing is smaller than what's there. So it's much closer out. It still meets the setbacks, but much closer to the road, so it's visible in both directions. So with that, I'll let Angela just take you through some graphics here, and then we're happy to answer any questions.
So, good evening, everyone.
You
So,
want me to hold anything?
No, I think I'm fine.
Okay.
So, this is the current site plan of the whole facility. Currently, this is the, Google image of what the facility currently looks like, where the signs are. We have the sign here, as you can see, it's almost tucked into the trees, tree line, almost impossible to see coming this way. We wanna propose the sign to be more parallel with the street. We're gonna, required setbacks is 20. I think we are proposing a 30-foot setback for the sign. Just because, you know, most likely, just in case God forbid somebody goes off the road, they're not hitting the sign or anything like that. It is in kind, like we said, it's gonna be smaller. It's gonna be illuminated just like the existing sign. The existing sign is actually shined light on it, so it kind of projected more shadows to the back. This is just illuminated the actual, the lettering of the sign. So this is the actual proposed look of the sign. It's just the Hudson Valley iCampus logo. In reference to scale human, it's only 8 feet tall. And it's in a better location. That's really what we're going for. And if this is what the existing sign looks like, this is what the sign would look like at night. So it's, you only see the logo of the lettering. It's not, the whole sign's not gonna be lit up, it's just the logo and the lettering.
Any questions for us?
Yes. Aesthetically speaking, this is not an attractive backing on the sign. Now, what's there now is a nice solid piece of granite. And is that going to be backed up enough into the existing vegetation that this will not be visible?
That is,
The backing would not be?
Yeah, this structure.
yeah, so
The
that's actually
structure.
inside. So the backing of this sign would actually be exactly what's in the front. It'd be essentially wrapped. So, for instance, you see this white backing right here, it'd be in the back as well. That, what you're referencing to, is the structure support poles that are
Right.
inside the
So
axle.
that's buried inside the
Correct.
sign, it's not hanging
Correct.
out behind it.
Correct. Yeah,
Okay.
it's gonna be essentially I guess a 5-sided sign. You'll have finished materials on all sides, obviously besides the back.
Okay.
But only the front will be illuminated.
Correct, yeah.
Exactly. It's a good question though, because
Yeah.
it looks like.
Yeah, sorry.
It appears
Yeah, it was
that
for,
it's a
yeah.
separate structure.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I apologize for the
Okay.
image.
And what is this blue thing over here?
That blue thing is if you would see it on the side. So this is the side of elevation. If you look this way at it,
Yes,
this is what it is. It's very thin and narrow.
okay.
So if you're walking towards it and sat like this, you see this side. That's
That's
what it
much clearer, thank you.
is. Sorry. Yeah, sorry, I didn't show the side.
I have one more question, if I might.
Sure.
What are the hours of operation and lighting on the sign?
Yeah, I can, so in the general rule in your sign code is it has to be off at 11 p.m. The client told us, of course, we can agree to what's in the code. It does have a provision that the building inspector can approve a later time if there's a purpose for it. I don't think that there's any, it's pretty normal business hours, though Pfizer, of course, is doing things 8 days a week, 25 hours a day, to do what they do. But for this part of the campus, we would abide by whatever the code is, which is 11 p.m., and they can set up with a timer or a sensor. And since daylight savings time is going away, hopefully, maybe,
Okay,
I'm sure Congress will have that right on their, top of their list for next year. But yeah, we would abide by the code, which is 11 p.m.
all right, thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions, comments? Is there anybody from the public wishing to speak on this application? Hearing none, seeing none, public portion is closed. Motion to approve is
I'll
presented.
make a motion to
I'll second.
approve.
All in favor?
All right, thanks a lot, much appreciated. Can't forget what I'm saying is, have a happy Thanksgiving. This, 3 weeks from tonight, it's sorry, I just realized it. Take care now.
All right,
Thank you.
SMK lot 4.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. Sean Cooner, applicant.
Okay. It's a 4-bedroom, 2.5 bath colonial, mix of materials, board and batten vinyl, along with regular clapboard vinyl in white, black timberline roof, black standing seam metal roof on the shed dormer over the garage and the front porch area, black gutters and leaders, black Anderson windows, Trex decking, I have an extensive landscape plan obviously attached.
Garage is gonna be white, brick veneer, standard brick.
Brick, maybe stone.
And the Trex, just wood tones, any specific color here?
I would say a charcoal to go along with the black and white. White railing, white Trex railing, and white posts.
Any questions, comments from the board? The structure at least? The doors, front doors, shows like it's almost, two.
Yeah, well, this was custom designed for somebody in the planning process. We got final approval December 21, and we're just here. We just got the map filed, so I had to, 2 weeks ago, give this customer the deposit back. So that door was theirs, yes, but I would say a single, actually, I'll do double doors there, and they'll be black also, with 3/4 glass panels.
Garage door,
White, or actually, let's do those black too, because the siding's white. And this be a carriage style door.
any questions, comments from the board or anything? And both roofs stay in black, right?
Correct.
Let's go with landscaping. Let's go move on to the room
Well, I think that's, we did, you know, a full foundation planting, screened the AC units. I won't get too deep into what the design process was, because it wasn't mine, it's a professional landscape architect, Steve Griggs, so.
There seems to be a lot of landscaping that size the existing house, so I think that's good.
Driveway just normal blacktop.
Yeah. Paver walkway.
Any comments, questions from the board? That's pretty good. Is there anybody from the public wishing to speak on this application? Hearing none, seeing none, public portion closed. That's quite nice.
Thank you.
A motion to approve as presented. All in favor?
Who said that?
Second. All in favor? Alright, lot 6.
This one is a 5-bedroom, 3-bath colonial. Also a mix of materials, vinyl clapboards and charcoal, yes. Which is a dark gray. That's that color there.
That's the side.
Yep. The shakes in the front gable will be the same color. We'll have a natural gray stone on the face of the garage. Shutters will be black. Windows will be white. All the corners and window trim will be white. Roof's gonna be pewter gray. Which is that color there. Very neutral gray, very popular color.
Same for the roof or the door.
Correct. Again, the front steps will be Trex. If indeed we need to do steps, we're trying to keep it as close to grade as possible because the buyer has a special needs child. So we're trying to get this wheelchair accessible. White garage doors, carriage style. Again, paver walkway. White posts, white rail, in the front porch.
Front door.
No, black. And that's a 6-panel door, sidelines.
Any questions, comments from the board on the structure?
And again, same thing on the landscaping. I think we did a pretty extensive plan, surrounded the whole house. Screened the air conditioning units. We're always trying to mix in flowering stuff on these houses. I mean, the problem is the deer seem to be eating up everything I'm planting.
Here it's not.
Yeah. And it doesn't matter where they are, whether it's spray them or anything else, but we're trying.
You said paver walkway, asphalt driveway.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a fence in the front or was
No,
that just a?
that's the curb, that's the cul-de-sac.
Any comments, questions from the board? Is there anybody from the public wishing to speak on this application? Sir, if you could come up to the microphone?
Sure.
Turn it on, state your name for us, that'd be great, and address.
My name is Michael Bowen. I live on 19 Colony Drive. And we're here more or less concerned, not so much with the structures, but we're directly on the other lots that we're not speaking about today, but lots 3, 2, and 1. And if you go back on that property, it's kind of wetlands back there, a lot of trees, a lot of older trees. So I'm not an arborist, but probably 50, 100-year-old trees, which obviously have roots and flows into that properties that we're talking about today. So we're kind of concerned about what the thoughtful plan with that is, with the vegetation and the trees as we start these projects on both lots 4 and 6. I'm sure we'll be back here again in due time for lots 3, 2, and 1. How's that going to affect our properties? You know, with water and different things happening with that project. There is a rock wall there. Some of the trees are on the rock wall, some of them are on our properties, some of them are on these lots. So I guess the major concern as you get further down, when you go to 19, our neighbors here on 21, and then 23 Colony, I know they filled in some land back there with some dirt. It's now pooling, heavy wetlands back there. We're just really concerned about how this overall project's gonna affect our properties. And we just wanna be on record to know, what the game plan is with that, and if there is ill effects from that, you know, what's gonna happen based on that, if that makes sense to everyone.
Sure, I'll try and answer best we can from the board that we are, which is really looking at aesthetics and
Yep.
the landscape. And a lot of that, I would expect it to be covered in site plan by the planning board.
And it was.
And I wouldn't have got here if it wasn't. And I expect that the planning board's got certain requirements, that stuff has to get cleaned up in a certain way. Is there anything you want to?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Just to try and ease your mind. So I built the subdivision, I don't know if you know that, the
Yep.
rest of it. And same situation where it came down to the properties on Colony Drive. There's a buffer that the planning board had me leave along the rock wall. I believe it's a 10-foot conservation easement, we'll call it.
So that's beyond the rock wall into
On my
your-
side.
Yeah, got it.
On my
got it,
side,
got it.
so those trees will not be cut down.
Which is nice to
And
hear,
they kept
actually.
extensive amounts of trees on that side of the property in between. Yeah, you know the lot number better than I do.
I'm
but,
learning them pretty quick here.
1, 2, and 3, and where we filled, where you're talking about.
Yeah,
That was a perk test done there. So they had to have us bring a machine in, dig, we dug there, we dug up in the front, and we dug several other places. That actually is going to be a retention pond back there.
okay.
So that's gonna get built up and retain the water that comes off the subdivision.
Cool.
So there'll be less runoff and it'll be contained properly.
So I'm a new neighbor there, obviously. I wasn't here for these previous meetings. I probably would have been here. Where would I get that information that was provided during the surveying of that?
The building department should be able to give you a
Okay.
copy of all the decisions and the whole stack of papers.
Yeah, not to say I don't take his word for it. I mean, the 10-foot buffer, this sounds good, which is nice to hear. But yeah, we just wanted to be on record with it. Sounds like they're gonna be.
And I
nice
apologize, I
houses.
wish I had a subdivision plan with me that shows the trees to remain because it's more inclusive than, I didn't come here expecting to discuss those lots tonight, unfortunately.
Okay, well, maybe I can contact you directly then if you're okay
Yeah,
with that.
absolutely.
Yeah, good. All right, cool. I appreciate the time and thank you very much.
Thanks. Hi, I'm Eileen Sager. I live on Colony also.
Can you,
So I just wanted to, I love the trees behind me and I know this
Sorry.
is, oh,
can you say your name again
Eileen Staker,
and your address?
21 Colony.
Thank you.
So I know I can't do anything about the trees. But I know just Sean, up the street from us, like, there's no barrier, like those houses now, there's no privacy. So I'm just confirming there will be trees as a barrier between us and these.
Well, all I can say about that is, when I left the property, there was a barrier. Those trees were not touched along that rock wall.
So my
As a
concern
matter of fact, the
is,
one gentleman had the rock wall all rebuilt beautiful on his own at the end, but I don't remember him taking any trees down. The next neighbor down in the T turnaround on the west end of the property, he did substantial work after I left. Filled in by the T turnaround and in his backyard somewhat, but that, again, had nothing to do with me. That was long after the fact. When I left there was a buffer of trees behind both of those properties.
so then so basically what you're saying is you could leave the trees, but the new people can.
Just like you could cut your trees down.
Because once the owner has it, they can do whatever they want to.
So I guess, yeah, we need to talk to you,
But
because
I
I
will
know,
tell you that I do believe there isn't, I believe it's labeled as a conservation. Don't hold me to that, 'cause I don't have the map in front of
well,
me.
yeah, because the wetlands,
My recommendation is to go to the
Well, they're
building,
not wetlands.
the building department, look at it, right, and ask that question there. That's gonna be the definitive thing that you're gonna be able to get to, right? Just come here during the day and ask for it, they'll pull it out for you. That's all.
And if somebody wants to contact me, I'll give you your phone,
Yeah,
my
yeah.
phone number. And when I'm on the site, maybe then I'll show you the plan.
Mhm.
Yeah,
I
good.
mean, that's the best thing because it has everything labeled.
Yeah, that would be great.
I mean, there's 8 pages of details there.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
believe me, it was 2 years' worth of planning to get to this point.
Is there anybody else from the public wishing to speak on this application? Hearing none, seeing none, public portion is closed. Any other questions, comments from the board? So, what I'm just gonna do is I'm gonna give you one condition, which is for the front steps, because it's on the plan as steps. I'm just gonna say, you have an option to make that on grade based on what you said.
Thank you very much.
So, do I have a motion to approve with the condition, or the option that the front steps can be, on grade entrance with, one or two. All second, all in favor? Aye. Well,
All right, thank you.
all right, next up, we've got a continuation of Data Bank Orangeburg plans.
I don't have this on.
Everybody just gets signed in, pass along.
Brian, do you have the application?
Yep.
Different hand? Thank you.
Diskin, D-I-S-K-I-N.
Right?
Frank,
That's what we get. Last name?
Mader, M-A-D-E-R. Huh? Is it okay to stand there?
Yeah, that's fine. Well, we start, ask you guys to just kind of rotate those two towards
That's correct. That's right.
So tell us what you guys have changed here, talk us through kind of what you proposed.
Okay, Mr. Donegan, I think some of the members weren't at the last meeting, so we're happy to go over the whole presentation. Again, on the other hand, we can just pick it up from where we left off as well, too. So whatever your preference is.
You okay? Let's see.
Yeah, it doesn't take up too much time.
Yeah, we can go over a summary
A
of
quick summary.
the structure, that'd be great.
Please.
Okay. The proposed project is a data center at the end of Corporate Drive. For those of you who may be familiar with that area, there was an existing data center. It was run by Verizon. It was a 3-story building, I believe, 4-story building, and that has been demolished. We're replacing it with a single-story data center now, 145,000 square feet in size. If you're familiar with data centers, there's the Bloomberg project, there's the JP Morgan Chase project, there's 1547. Big buildings, very few employees in there. So we were at the planning board previously, and we got preliminary approval and negative declaration of the SECRA, State Environmental Quality Review Act. We then proceeded to the ZBA because we needed a few variances, reduce the parking, reduce the number of loading docks in the town of Orangetown. The number of parking spaces and the number of loading docks is directly related to the size of the building, but we don't need all that parking. We don't need all of those loading docks because there's really very little traffic that will be going in and out of there. So we were successful at the ZBA, received the required variances, so we came next to ACABOR. And assuming we can get your approval, we will be proceeding to planning for final site plan approval. Okay, that was very brief. There's a lot more detail than that. The read's not just version English. So perhaps I'll turn it over to our landscape architect and Ben, who are the engineers.
I'm Frank, I work for Kimley Horn, landscape designer. So yeah, if we look to our plan, we have updated a couple things in the plan. Just a quick summary, overall we have parking lot trees and then trees surrounding the roads and driveways that circulate the site to give even canopy over most of the pavement. Looking towards the north at the egress road at the top, we have a buffer on a partial side of the northern side of the road, and then we have an additional semi-deciduous and evergreen buffer on the south side of the road. And then we also have more plantings surrounding the stormwater basin, again, evergreen and deciduous trees. Those are mainly composed of tall, deciduous hardwood trees, and then evergreens like Norway spruces and white pines. So we have multiple layers of buffering, and we try to focus on creating more of a naturalized line of buffering instead of just like a straight line of trees. So that basically buffers this entire northern side of the site, and then we also added a line of buffering down at the bottom of the site in between where the stormwater facility is and the loading dock. And then if you look towards the other side of the northern site, we have a staggered buffer buffering towards the north, towards the baseball fields.
Oh, and one additional thing that was changed from last time, we removed some of the plantings from the stormwater basins on direction from Bruce Peters, based on design standards.
Yeah, we tried to incorporate all of the things that were discussed at the last meeting with you. We made some revisions, presented it to Mr. Peters, who overruled some of those things, saying this is not, what you would allow in certain areas that have to do with.
It was due to code compliance around the basins and whatnot. I think 3 revisions back and forth with them on it.
Yeah. And all of the screening and buffering around where the egress road is, that's the maximum amount that we could fit in that Mr. Peters would, allow us to plant in that area, just given the space. So.
Any questions on the landscaping changes? In general, I appreciate you guys doing this. This is an improvement. I like the way you guys have done this. Appreciate it. Any questions from the board on the structure or building or anything while we're here as well?
Shakesi. I'm a partner with the firm O'Toole Scrivo, and I represent several concerned neighbors from both Orangeburg as well as New Jersey. And do have a couple of questions because we're a little bit confused. We've been following the planning board meeting as well as this meeting, and we did hear the recommendations at the planning board meeting, but we didn't see any plans that were revised on the site to reflect some of the comments that were made tonight. The most recent landscape plans that were available, I think, were from September still.
Is there copies in the back of the?
No, the one in the back for landscaping is still dated in September.
It's the same, the original date is still the same on our plans.
So.
I have on the table what you guys have in front of me.
State stamp, November the 3rd.
There was a topography plan that was revised, but the landscaping plan still indicated that it was
Can I
from
see?
September.
Do you want to see it?
It was a topography survey, but not a landscaping one.
So we do have an updated one from
This
today.
is the one.
And from, I mean, what we've
No,
done
this is
is
what she
essentially
said.
added extensive bordering on the northern side.
This is what she's saying. She's referring to this date here.
Oh, yeah, we didn't put a
That's what I'm
final
saying.
date.
There's no date on
Yeah,
here.
Right.
So this date on here still says 9/20/2022.
Yeah, that's because it was like an intermediate submission.
This plan that the board has is the same plan that's on the table, which is also the same plan that's on the website.
Okay, so all the trees that were going to be in the area of the easement have been removed?
No, they're all, we've actually added all the trees in there, up to a certain spot where we weren't allowed to, 50 feet from where we're intersecting the front road, based on, Mr. Peter's comments.
So are they still on the easement area?
They're on the north side of the easement and not on the south side of the easement, because there's a force main that runs along the south side that we were directed to not plant over. So that's why on the south side, we have it within the site, there's plantings, and then when it gets to our property line, we no longer have any plantings due to the force main, and then we continue the buffering on the north side of the property.
Okay, it was kind of, and unfortunately, as an attorney, I really couldn't evaluate before I came tonight to see on behalf of my clients, because it really wasn't made clear. Real briefly, and I thank the board for all of your work, we've been seeking just some reasonable concessions along the way. This is, as I'm sure you're well aware, well over $100 million project, and some of the items are just basic good neighbor type of concerns that the people I represent have. For myself, it's actually unusual. Normally, I'm on the other side. I'm the one representing developers. I have a 1.5 million square foot warehouse project I'm doing down to a 24-unit mixed use. And the one thing that all my clients always do is engage and try to make reasonable concessions.
Okay.
Here, the main concerns are, one, the landscaping, of course. Nobody's trying to stop this particular project. Phase 2 will fight to the death. This, we understand that, the community wants the tax revenue. Some of the alternatives could have been far worse. But in the scheme of a $100 million project, sound attenuation, landscaping, ensuring that some of the concerns of the neighbors are addressed. And unfortunately, there's been almost like a flat-out refusal to even engage in any sort of capacity.
Is there anything about this?
Yeah, today. So some of the items that even were raised at your last meeting that unfortunately I couldn't attend pertain to sound issues, which really are an architectural type of issue. You have the outdoor equipment yard that concerns have been raised about throughout. We had our own sound engineer conduct a study, and simple things, like right now they have an open louvered system that nobody's been able to provide us with what sort of baffling, what sort of materials for that open equipment yard with the reservoir right there where sound's going to bounce all over the place. Generators that are potentially going to run through the night, get tested. It's a 24-hour day facility. Solid sound attenuation walls around the open equipment barn. It's a very reasonable ask, and I know developers never want to spend money, but it's literally pennies on the dollar for a project of this magnitude. Lighting, I know recommendations were made by this board with respect to lighting and ensuring that, you know, you're not going to have spillage onto adjacent properties. We haven't seen anything other than your comments on adjusting or reflecting that. Likewise, let me just take a look at the notes. You know, the plantings were a question because the plantings provided on the original landscape plan were on the easement. The planning board specifically indicated they were impermissible, and we haven't seen them, but we just want to ensure that there are robust evergreens, and not, you know, 4-foot ones, but, you know, appropriate sized ones that are planted throughout to provide additional sound attenuation as well as for light. You know, there's still the open issue of the easement, which this board doesn't have to deal with, but that's going before the planning board. And, you know, so it's basic things that we're seeking.
Thank you.
Okay?
Appreciate it. Who am I on the board? Sorry,
May I
Paul.
speak?
I'm sorry, ma'am, go ahead. My apologies.
No, that's quite all right. Melody Fiore, 99 Hunt Road, Orangeburg, New York. For those that weren't here at the last ACABOR meeting, my property abuts the entire length of the sewer department, the pump station, and part of my property abuts Verizon, formerly 9X. Where do I begin? I again oppose what I see on some of the plans here. First of all, I know this is an architectural and aesthetic board. The issue with this fire emergency exit that the town wants, that this project wants to use the town easement, this 50-foot easement. I mentioned last time, this is a town, for those that weren't here, this is a town easement. Now, you could see this on the plans that they actually presented, so I don't have to bring photographs. This easement, which is supposed to be 50 feet, which is the only buffer I have between my property and the sewer department, is not 50 feet. The sewer department, in building this, because I worked with Rondello and Tom Kleiner at the time, they have encroached on this. They're already on the easement by 6 feet.
Excuse
So
me,
we
who
can't
is
do anything.
they? Who is they? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
When you're saying they have encroached, who is the they?
The sewer department,
The
when
sewer,
they
I'm sorry.
built the pump station, because I was there for
Okay,
the
no, I
building.
got you. I
Okay,
lost for a
no,
second.
that's quite all right. So, at this point, when I negotiated trees, because the property is almost on top of my property, the trees now, with the encroachment, now shortens this easement by about 10 feet. So now we've got 40 feet of easement. 20 feet on my property line, from my property line, is sewer easement. So we're talking about approximately maybe 20 feet for them to put this 20-foot emergency exit. This is not possible.
Nothing about that part. This is not
Okay,
something-
well, let's talk about
Let's talk about what we can talk about.
Okay, what we can talk about is that they're presenting here to you. Now, and if I didn't read the minutes from the meeting with Bruce Peters, this plan is showing trees on the easement, but the sewer easement. So that's not helping me with my buffer. So if I came here, which I did look at the plans, I'm seeing trees, which can't be placed there. So I feel like I'm being hoodwinked. I feel I have no buffer here. I have no idea if they're even going to try to put this road in here. There's no place for this road, and then if they put it in where it was, I'm still with the trees.
So when you say they can't put trees in here, can you clarify where you're talking about?
I'm talking about the easement. This is sewer easement, 20 feet along this entire, along all our properties is sewer easement. Now, according to Bruce Peters, he's saying that no plantings along the north side northbound side of the easement. That's this. This is northbound. This is south.
Okay, so your concern is the trees north of that easement may not be able to put it.
Exactly. So again, I'm here with no buffer. Absolutely no buffer. And the biggest issue here is that we know that they can put this emergency exit elsewhere. They can pick up a phone right now and they can make a deal and they can have this entire easement situation resolved. They have an access road elsewhere. They just don't want to do it. And I'm here and I'm frustrated.
Understood. Anything about outside of the trees on the north side is good.
No, because I'm not opposing the plan. I think there should be more trees. And if they can get a road there, I doubt that they can because there's not enough space there on the easement to do this. If they can, then we're going to have to talk about trees.
All right. Thank you. Anybody else, sir? Yes. Name for us, please.
James Coffey, 139 Hunt Road. And I just want to say for the record, I think the easement that butts up against my property, I think it is illegal, and I'd like to be shown where it is legal.
That's outside of the purview of this
Well, that's what I'm saying for the record.
Yeah. Thank you. Anybody else?
Yep.
Yeah?
My name is Leslie Watley. I live at 6 Buckingham Court in Old Penn.
What's your last name? I'm sorry.
Leslie
Your last name?
Watley, W-H-A-T-L-E-Y. And I live right there. I was not able to attend the last meeting, I apologize, but I did watch the video. And when I watched the video, somebody on the board asked the question, can you see this building from the New Jersey side? And the data bank person responded, no, they can't see it. Verizon would have been more visible because it was 4 stories high, and we're only 30 feet. The answer to that is I beg to differ. The Verizon building was tucked over here in the corner. Yes, it was 4 stories high, but it was only about 50,000 square feet. This right here is approximately 200,000 square feet, which is 5 acres. Verizon also had their generators tucked back here. I'll come back to that in a second. I live right here. I am going to see this building. I'm going to see the lights, okay? So the statement that was on the record, that I'm not going to see it, is not accurate.
So,
Also,
ma'am, can you just point again where your house is?
I'm right here, right
Thank you.
here,
Okay.
right there. And I go in my backyard every day, and I have to tell you, the demolition phase of this has been a disaster. It's been loud, and it's been 6 days a week, and it's not been courteous. And if the future of this project is anything like the demolition, I got right to be worried. Okay? So now let's talk about sound attenuation. They want to have an equipment yard, which is approximately 50,000 square feet, which is more than an acre, open, full of equipment. They want louvers. Okay? That is closer to my yard than Verizon's generators were. They're going to have equipment on the roof, which is closer than Verizon's equipment was. They have not demonstrated that they've got proper sound attenuation. We hired a sound consultant. The sound consultant, simply put, looked at the equipment and said, each of the individual items might be below the sound limit, but when you operate them together, it's not. They will present their findings at the planning board next week. Okay? We are asking for further effort to be put in to sound attenuation. I understand it's money, but we live there. Okay? Now, let's talk a little bit about the architectural aspects of what they talked about in the easement. The gentleman in the video I watched said he was going to put in pavers. Okay. The whole purpose of this is for emergency access of big old fire trucks coming in a hurry. Did anybody do a study that says whether or not pavers can handle?
So that's something you have to ask a different board. We can't.
You're architectural.
We can't talk about structural pavers and fire.
But that's a question. I just want to put the question on the record. Can those pavers handle the fire trucks that are coming in and out? And can there's utilities under here, and there's sewer under there. Can they handle the weight of that coming in and out of the site? This was a last-minute decision. This was not well thought out. The New York residents have said, we got other ideas, can you talk to us?
That's something we can't help with, we can't.
But it's an architectural flaw of their entire plan.
It's not
And
about.
if that is not legal, the
Ma'am.
entire plan's not legal.
We are here to talk about aesthetics and landscaping. The structure of the road is outside the purview of this board. If there's
Okay.
something about this plan you'd like to address, please, let's hear it.
Chris, can I just, so when we say we're an architectural review board, hence that's where you're getting that from, right?
Yes.
That we, right, so it's in our title. What that actually means is when we look at the appearance of a building, when we look at the appearance of something, we don't look up, we're not involved in how-to of the architecture itself, okay? We're there for the after effect and what the architecture looks like. I understand what you're saying, because it's tricky, but that's not us. So
Okay, appreciate that.
No, that's okay. You can put the question out there, but just understand we're on the other side of it. We're at the end of it.
Okay. But while we're at it, they're taking a lot of trees and stuff down over here. That's kind of gimpy. I mean, seriously?
Okay.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else in the public side?
Hi, I'm David Rosen. I'm at 10 Buckingham Place. I'm Leslie's neighbor on the other side.
He's on the reservoir.
That's right. So again, I was here at the last meeting. Again, thank you for some of the questions and comments that came up last time. From the standpoint of just speaking about the landscaping, I think there was some very specific recommendations by the board, as I recall, not only to put additional plantings in, but also those plantings should be very specifically addressing some of the concerns both of my esteemed neighbors on the New York side as well as on the New Jersey side. Personally, having looked at the plan today, I did not see that much significant evergreen additional plantings that were adjacent to, for example, our property perimeter, or for that matter, as Ms. Fiore pointed out, the feasibility to really protect our property from the effects of this development. So I do ask the board to really reconsider or make as an additional requirement to put a significant amount of additional evergreens to protect the neighbors, both from a visual as well as from a sound attenuation standpoint. That is, particularly at this time of year, as we know, when leaves come down, we have a fair amount of, there is some obviously deciduous trees that, in speaking for our side, that does provide some barrier, at least in terms of visually during the height of the season. But as the leaves come down, obviously we can see very clearly into that property as well as here. I would also say, again, back to the visual aspects, now that the HVAC, I understand, is going to be on the roof, I think that's a big concern, both visually, and again, we'll talk to the planning board in the future about the potential impact of that sound attenuation to the entire New York, New Jersey residency, because as we all know, with that HVAC, which throws off a lot of sound on the roof at the height, this is a way open area over the entire Lake Tapan that is going to be, it's like throwing a rock in the lake, and the ripple effect that that's going to have in the entire area. This is a huge project. And so I would really, really ask you guys to please, from a visual as well as from the planning board's perspective, sound attenuation standpoint, put additional thought and consideration in terms of how we deal with that. Lastly, building on some of the other comments, we did see last time, and I believe it's probably still there, the louvered system. I don't believe it's very attractive. I think there are many more attractive solid walls that will also provide the additional safety net that we're asking for from a good neighbor standpoint to have to give us extra buffering just in case some of the comments that were brought up here about the sound being attenuated because each machine has its own attenuation. We all know how that works, and we all know that over time machines break and the barrier, what do they call the ball bearings start to wear, So the more attenuation you put in now, the better. So I would ask you, please, to consider that as part of the overall plan. Thank you.
Is there anybody else from the public wishing to speak on this application? Hearing none, seeing none, public portion is closed. The sound stuff is a planning board.
Well, we'll be happy to respond to each and every issue that's been raised here tonight.
Go for it.
Okay. Sound attenuation, lighting was also mentioned.
I'm sorry, would you sit up and speak up, because I'm having trouble hearing you, so I'm assuming that they're having trouble
Sure.
hearing you as well.
Sure, is this better?
That's better,
Okay.
thank you.
Sound attenuation, lighting, I think was mentioned as well too. Back when we first appeared before the planning board, they of course are lead agency. They are required under the State Environmental Quality Review Act to see what potential impacts this project could have on the environment, including sound, lighting, a whole drainage, a whole host of issues. It was reviewed, we received a negative declaration of the seeker, so that really has been already addressed. We presented a sound study to the planning board at that time. Having said that, I'm going to ask Tony, who's really familiar with data centers, just to kind of go through what the sound attenuation is.
Sure, and not going into too much technical detail for this meeting, I just want to prepare you for a response and also make the neighbors aware of, I know it's going to come up in the next meeting, I just want to kind of give them a heads up of kind of how we're going to respond. So A, we do have a response letter to their response letter. B, each individual generator has its own sound attenuated package per the local jurisdiction, per the local regulation, per the local requirements. I had read somewhere in there that the folks were worried about multiple generators being tested and run at the same time or at night or on the weekends, maybe similar to what the adjacent data center Bloomberg does. In the original PRC committee or meeting, I had stated that we are going to be testing during the day, Monday through Friday, so we're not doing weekend noise or night noise to interrupt the neighbors. When we do test the generators, the testing is probably a 30-minute test on one, maybe two generators at max during during a monthly maintenance. The only time you'd have multiple generators running is if the facility is fully loaded and there's an emergency where Orange and Rockland has an outage and we have to go to generator. So I just want to make sure that everybody understands it's one, maybe two running simultaneously during testing. As far as the roof is concerned, we have much more efficient cooling, much more efficient units than Verizon ever had. I can guarantee you what Verizon was operating on is going to hum way louder than that roof hums. Excuse me, I shouldn't say way louder than that roof hums. It would be way louder than any type of noise coming off of there. The roof does meet the local code and jurisdictional requirements from a sound perspective. And as far as screen wall is concerned, the only reason we even put the screen wall in there is because of the benefit of neighbors and our customers coming in. We don't want them coming in to see, bam, generators just out of the blue. We put a screen wall in there to screen that equipment and give you an aesthetic and appealing look, so you're not coming in and seeing all this major infrastructure. We put a screen wall on our single-story roof so the neighbors in New Jersey and the neighbors in New York aren't seeing all this roof equipment from a level perspective. I understand Verizon was on the 4th floor. They did not have a screen wall. They had a parapet that you could still see from the street level most of their equipment. Our stuff will be screened in. The purpose of louvers is because you need to have a CFD run, which is an airflow analysis, to make sure that your equipment runs properly, both from a generator intake perspective and your rooftop equipment perspective. Hence the fact that we're putting in a louvered system instead of a sound attenuated wall system. A, the wall is not required. B, it would affect the operations of my facility.
So, just like the roof stuff is completely screened, right? So I thought I remember what you said, completely screened.
Yeah, you can see that bottom picture there.
This is a screen. You can actually see it on it's the lighter color screen on top of the parapet.
And then the lighting question came up, and if I recall from the last meeting, the lighting is LED downlights on the wall, only around the road and entrances. Is that accurate?
light spillage at the property lines.
Is there a timer, or?
I imagine you guys are working within town code.
Yes.
Yeah, whatever.
Exactly.
Local compliance is.
If we're not, I'm sure there'll be complaints made, the building department will come out, the code enforcement officer, and we'll hear about it, but we don't wanna hear about it, we just wanna comply. Question was raised about the easement. I don't think this is the proper form it was raised. The last time I said the same thing then. I can tell you that it's been discussed with the town attorney's office. I am looking at a copy of an easement that was given by the town of Orangetown across their existing property, dated July 14, 1960, and it describes specifically the 50-foot wide access easement that benefits this lot. There is, within that 50-foot wide easement, a 20-foot wide sewer easement, so we have to coexist with the two easements. And that's why we brought in Bruce Peters. We wanted him to review it. We talked to the town attorney's office. There are other utilities that run through there. There's fiber, there's sewer lines. Obviously, we don't want to start digging and create a problem here. So we're trying to go about this very carefully, but I can assure you this easement exists. And it will only be used for emergency access, which hopefully is never. You know, in the event of a fire truck might have to come down or something. Otherwise, they have a nice, easy way to get in there on Corporate Drive, which is publicly maintained as far as I know, at least to the cul-de-sac.
Yeah. Question on the one question for the north side of that easement. Is there any concern with those trees being there? Is that a problem?
She may have misheard, but Bruce wanted those trees on that side. He's reviewed this exact drawing and gave his okay with the planting perspective.
Okay, so those trees on the north side of that easement, they will be there.
Right, and the force main is on the south side. There's an abandoned sewer line on the north side that's no longer in operation. The force main's on the south side, that's why we don't have trees along that side.
He was very specific, again, later for liquid plat applicant, but he's very specific that he want any plantings in that easement area that would affect force main. That's why we took them out and that's why they were removed. But there was very specific, and Bruce Peters spent a lot of time discussing that with us at that meeting.
Okay. So this is an accurate plan, trees on the north side of that easement?
Correct. And that was approved as of the 26th on the third revision before we came to this meeting. Chris, if I may, just one more thing, I just wanted to address it. There was a comment about the pavers on the roadway, and then we'll get to that later, but it's not actually a paver, it's a geo-block product, or geotech, excuse me. Ben, maybe you can tell the benefits a little bit more of using that product. By the way, we did coordinate that with the fire chief in coordination with the technical aspects of his truck, the weight, et cetera, but there are some benefits in using that instead of just asphalt.
Right. We've discussed this with the town fire inspector. Obviously, we need his approval. We want to make sure that the fire trucks, which can weigh a lot and be very big, that this emergency access that we plan on installing is sufficient to accommodate both size and weight of the fire trucks.
Are there lights on the pavement?
No lights, no.
No lights.
No, because it's emergency access.
Big blocks? No reflectors?
There will be reflectors along the sides to delineate from the grass that's next to it and the pavers so that fire trucks won't go off the road.
And that the fire inspector
That's a
specifically.
requirement from the fire inspector.
And then the other thing that came up was trees on the south side. The plan that came to us last time did not have any trees indicated on the south side of New Jersey. The new plan, you've essentially got white pines, some spruce. Those would end up mature, 80-foot tall, 60-foot wide, evergreen trees.
Sounds great.
Correct,
Well, not tomorrow. It's gonna take time.
Exactly.
Ben, real quick on that, I think we had to remove some because of the basin on the south side as well.
Yeah, there were some in the basin, but we're on the very outer extents of it, which is now, that's what Bruce Peters wanted. So again, there's, as one of the neighbors mentioned, there's additional screening further south towards their property. I mean, there's 800 feet of space between the two buildings, like their nearest home and our nearest building. So there's a ton of trees further down south. We just don't show all that because that's not part of this, application.
You're saying this gap under the base, you couldn't fill it there?
Because there's an actual stream that goes in that area, so there are trees already in there.
Yeah, two revisions are pulling that out just because of code.
So that whole thing is gonna be clear cut?
You gotta go with the plan. They're gonna include a line of trees at the south
no showing of where they're clear cutting, if they're clear cutting the whole thing. There's no details other than that.
And then on the north side of this, you added a number of trees that we talked about, basically up and down. Any,
I just wanted to add, because Tony was gonna ask Ben to do it, but I'll do it. Why do we use geoblock? Because it's less impervious surface, it helps with the drainage. Obviously, the most important thing is that it's sufficient to handle any fire trucks coming through their weight and size. So,
any questions, comments from the board?
So, let me begin by, I'm always happy, the neighbors here are not disappointed in the project of this magnitude coming to town. But what always troubles me is when I see so many of you here all come out for the project itself. And I'm still hearing disgruntled residents of Orangetown, and they're upset. Okay? So, besides being an architectural review committee member, I'm an advocate for the people of Orangetown. They shouldn't be that upset. They shouldn't still have unanswered questions. There should be, if there's this many of you, there should probably be at least one of you to be a spokesperson, to be a liaison between what's going on with what you have planned and meeting with them with what their needs might be. Because we're not here to, how do you say, be the go-between. It's like two fighting teams. It's not our job to do that. We're here to approve plans, and these plans are still coming up, and they look like they're missing some details, and you can understand the questions that they might have. I also have. But if this was any one of your homes that was being invaded upon the way this project may be invading upon their territory, you'd be sitting there and standing there and saying what they're saying. So be a little bit, I don't see it. And this time I'm a little surprised because we've worked together before, and you've been amazing. And
I try to address people's concerns.
And I don't know that they came, and the first thing their attorney is saying is there's been no communication. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 of you. And nobody has had the opportunity or taken the time. I'm sorry, I'm not done.
Sorry about that, Matt.
I've spoken with Ms. Fiore, I've spoken with Mr. Coffey. I don't think we can address their concerns. We have tried to, but I don't think at this point that we can. And it seems as if they now have retained an attorney, so.
There's a retainer on her wall, the woman who's on Hunt Street, right? So we can't put anything on the the sewer, the 50 feet. Okay, can this project be so that maybe on her property we could put up pictures?
I actually suggested that at the last meeting,
You did?
but I don't think we're gonna, I don't think that she wants that.
So that's been addressed.
It was mentioned last meeting, yes.
Okay, I wasn't here.
I did not respond to that when we spoke, because I still believe that this is unethical and illegal to use this town easement for this project
but
when
see-
there are alternatives.
Okay, so I'm gonna address that too. Again, I just said, this board doesn't do that. We don't
Yeah,
sit
no, I
here-
understand.
Right, we're here just for the art, but that's what I'm saying, it shouldn't come back to us on the second time around that we're discussing this kind of stuff. So, I'm just asking you to reach out to some of them for some of these concerns. I don't think that they sound so unreasonable.
I just don't think this is
I-
final yet
Okay,
with this
well,
easement issue.
right, so we're gonna keep all options open.
And if I may just real quick, I did reach out to Mr. Quinn back in July. And, you know, some of the responses have been, your clients don't have standing, you know, we're not, so.
So this, hold on, we gotta get out of this conversation, it's not the, where do you, let's talk about the plan and what's.
So I'm going back to the trees. I'm not so sure. There's supposed to be two functions of these trees, right? They're supposed to be aesthetically presentable, and they're supposed to be functional, right? So functional meaning sound barrier, light distraction, barrier, things of that sort.
So yeah, I'd like to address that, yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, if you can focus again your attention up to the top of the site here. The trees that border this part of the stormwater basin, these are all large deciduous trees. So these ones right here space out a little bit. These are gonna be your trees that are, they're gonna be your 60, your 80-foot trees. They're gonna be 50 feet wide. these trees right here, these are all your spruces, your white pines, again, native evergreen trees, also, 50 to 80 feet. They're all in a natural growing location, so there's no impervious space, there's no pavement that's reflecting heat up at them. They're gonna be able to grow with a strong vigor. They're gonna have nice, roots.
How many feet do they start at, might I ask?
So typically we plant evergreen trees around 8 to 10 feet. It takes about a year or two for them to adjust to, where they're planted. But, after that, they'll be in a natural growing location, so they'll be able to grow at a normal rate that you'd see in a natural area of forest. So it's not gonna be like a street tree where, after 30 years, they're only 30 or 40 feet tall.
I noticed the indication that they were 6 foot, the ones that were running along my property. Is that with the ball or without the ball?
So that's with the ball. So that's a typical
So you're talking about, it's like going to be a 4-foot tree, and what they're not aware, and, I have these 60-foot
Yeah.
maples that are these beautiful
Yeah.
trees that are going, I know,
Glad
I'm
to-
suffering here, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Continue,
No,
but I would appreciate larger trees, if
Sure.
that, as we negotiated
Yeah.
with O&R.
I heard you.
Oh,
Yeah, so all of these trees right here that you see along this easement, they're all predominantly evergreen trees. And then you see along the north side of the easement, there are a few deciduous trees spaced out a little bit on center to break up the monotony of just a continuous evergreen wall of trees. So there's a mix of species, there's a mix of placement and variation within the screen. So it's not a continuous, border of, green giant arborvitae. It's all native evergreen trees that will have, that strong vigor to grow very tall. And I'll just add at the end of that, when we typically install trees for a site like this, we'll use, 6 to 8 foot evergreen trees. So you can imagine, about this high at the top of my hand, a 3-inch caliber deciduous tree.
Just for the record.
Yeah,
6 foot
I
tall.
understand. And then a 3-inch caliber deciduous tree will typically be about 14 to 15 feet tall. Depending on the species, of course, different species grow at different rates. But if you can imagine, 15 to 18 foot tall tree that's deciduous. So, any other questions about species or placement?
Let me ask a clarifying question.
Sure.
Because one of the questions I had was about the 6-foot height of these
Sure.
trees, which to me, for what you guys are doing, seems small. And my question was
Yeah.
gonna be, then you said 8 to 10 feet. So when they're planted, finished from ground to tip, what
Sure.
height are we talking?
So when you specify the 6 foot on the schedule, that means that'll be the minimum height that the contractor will tag them and then bring it onto the site. So sometimes they might, like if you have a larger site like this one, you'll have a couple hundred trees. They'll tag a bunch. Some might be 6 feet, some might be 8 to 10, depending what the nursery stock is. Sometimes it is a little bit more advantageous to use a smaller tree because they are still at a younger state where if you have a larger tree, they become more accustomed to being dug in at a nursery, and they're accustomed to being watered, more frequently. So when you put a larger tree into a new environment, it's a little bit tougher and slower, I should say, for it to adjust to that new growing environment.
That's more than that.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, it's more expensive to replace a larger tree. So when you see 6 feet on the schedule, that just means that's the absolute minimum height that they would be tagged and installed.
Does that include the ball?
So you're essentially saying, once they're planted, from the ground, to the tip, you're gonna be at minimum 6 feet.
Yes.
So not 4 feet?
No.
No, because I'm 4 feet.
Can I go back to just my comment? And I appreciate the respect for the community, and just so everyone knows, this is my 5th red-eye flight out here from Scottsdale, Arizona to attend these meetings. And I take a lot of pride in what I do, and I take a lot of pride with my team, and I take a lot of pride in respecting the people of the community. I will give you my phone number just like the last gentleman did. If somebody wants to reach out to Tony Corey as the liaison of the project, we can keep the discussions to a minimum outside of what should be discussed here. But out in this parking lot, I've took the opportunity to talk to Mr. David Rosen before on this side with my CEO who took presence with me 2 meetings ago. I've talked to Ms. Fiore, I've talked to Mr. Coffey. I've even had multiple conversations with Mr. Don Brenner, who's not here today, including my Chief of Development, my CFO, my COO, and my CEO on separate conversations.
The
Okay, I just wanted to address that for you, that I can be that liaison.
So, Matt, so with that being said, understand that it took for them to speak it, me to bring it up, and it's not part of our purview of what we do. But even, I'm sorry, I don't mean to say you, but what is your name again?
Frank.
But when Frank stood up the second time versus the first time, he was a lot more, how do you say, informative to let them know the functionality of his plantings. You see, the communication goes a long way. You may all have that in your, but it's not coming across. I
Understood.
didn't see it. I have to commend you for the way you stood up the second time. I thank you. I felt more comforted, I felt more informed, and perhaps they did too. Perhaps we need to do more of that the first time around, and we won't be having these unwarranted discussions, because I know I'm gonna get yelled at. But I want everybody to play nice.
At least that's us yelling.
Well,
If I may, you know, even with respect to sound attenuation, the past couple of hearings, you know, there has been testimony that it'll be individually baffled. I've requested at least twice, you know, how? What are the specifications? What's going to be utilized?
Ma'am,
Yeah.
public portion is closed.
Okay.
Is there anybody else from the board wishing to comment? No. Questions from anybody?
So I'm just wondering if there is an opportunity for the border down here. It just seems to be like a single line. Is there an opportunity to add a little bit in? It just seems like on this border you have more.
It's actually not the south property line also, that's just the south of the first building. There's a whole nother 800 feet of property lot that's not even on this sheet, so I think that's worth pointing out too.
Yeah, there's a lot of trees already in that area.
But those are not evergreen trees, and so during this time of year, it is.
Sir.
Also to be noted, we can't develop on certain extents of the property due to a presence of an eagle's nest, so we have to limit the location of the trees. So that's kind of another sticking point, and that's why we've done what we can to hopefully address that side concerns without going too far south, and providing enough buffering on this side.
And Ben, how far is it from the building to the nearest New Jersey neighbor?
820 feet.
So the plan that you're looking at over there stops right over here. The property actually ends all the way down over here. So there's this many more 100 feet, set of 100 feet.
Where are the old man houses?
They're down here. They're not on this plan at all. So you can see that circular cul-de-sac there. That's roughly right over here or so. So you have all this dimension between that point to the state line and the old end homes over here.
And where's the eagle's nest?
There is an eagle's nest, an abandoned eagle's nest, approximately over here, which is, I believe, I don't remember the exact
We have to be
distance it is, but it's compliant. We did a study with the New York DEC and also the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, and we did a surveillance of the nest for, I don't recall the exact timeline on there, but we complied with everything, and we're in compliance with their review.
Get DEC okayed the plan with respect to the eagle's nest.
For phase one, not phase two.
What we're talking about is phase one. We
Right.
know that, and we stated that for the record many times, so when I hear council, and just a little bit about council, I mean, just for the record, because we're on the record, you know, we talked about sound attenuation. There was a letter submitted to the last BRC meeting, and the council's letter specifically stated that we comply with the sound attenuation. And the solution that council had about sound attenuation, again, just for the record to state this, is like, well, we should apply the New Jersey standard in New York for sound attenuation when we meet state, local codes for sound. So, you know, again, we want to work, but at the same time, there's a level of reason that we have to deal with as well. We've complied with the Orangetown code. Our studies have shown that. The planning board has given us the preliminary approval as to that code. So, again, when I hear about sound, I've heard this before, and when your recommendation is apply New Jersey's rules and regulations to New York, again, I just want to know for the record, that was a recommendation, so thank you.
And just for the record, the recommendations
please.
run beyond that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Question about this open field. Is this gonna be left open wild, or is it gonna be mowed, or this grass area?
Should it just be lawn area?
So it's gonna be mowed on a regular basis?
The entire premises will be maintained.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if it was gonna be
No,
or left wild?
my customers,
Understory.
yeah, no, it's, the operations cost on the site are.
Any other questions, comments from the board? They did. Okay. Making sure my notes, please make notes of the video and video from the front, do I have a motion to approve as presented?
I'll make
I will second. All in favor?
Uh,
Opposed?
Thanks, Devin.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting. I'll second. All in favor?